Hello, everybody. Ho, ho, ho. And welcome to December's roadmap. We are suitably dressed for the occasion tonight, and I am spellbound at Matt's fantastic Christmas get-up today. Matt, do you want to tell the little story of how this has come into being?
So, JD said, make sure you've got Christmas jumper on for tomorrow's roadmap stream. I said, thanks for the notice. That's great. Appreciate that. And then I had a brainwave. I said, I can delegate this task. Called my wife. And said, can you go get me a Christmas jumper from Primark or something? Just get a Christmas jumper.
Other shops are available.
And anywhere. So she thought, hang on. You just want something to be totally embarrassed by on the stream, don't you? I said, you could take it that way. She said, leave here with me. So she bought a jumper and she made this.
I mean, I'm super impressed. I mean, it's both hideous, embarrassing, but also very, very charming. And I enjoy it. And hats off to Matt's wife.
Thanks, Si. Thanks so much. I'm going to take this off, however, because it's falling off anyway. It looks, there's silly and there's silly.
I'd have liked you to keep it on. I think it would have been a nice... removed from the cat ears. I think it would have been a nice extension if you could have found a way to have made that like cat antlers, possibly. But anyway, we had Ben on last week who did no admin for the preview stream for Bremen. So efficient. I'm here to bring things back to a grinding halt with everyone's favourite introduction admin section to the roadmap, because there's been a lot that's been going on. It's been quite a busy couple of weeks. Just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of what's been going on, and also what is potentially coming for the next month, the next few weeks, before we go into 2023 and we finish for Christmas. So today, in fact, no, let's start Tuesday. Let's start Tuesday because we released Bremen, Bahnstrecke Bremen Oldenburg on Tuesday, and we have been following and reviewing all of the feedback that we've been getting in. There've been a couple of post-release patches that have come out on Steam console. They should be coming out at some point in the next few days or early next week, but hopefully a lot of the feedback that we were receiving in the first sort of 24 hours of release, a lot of that will have been dealt with those patches. So if you haven't played it since Tuesday, give it a go now. Let us know what you think, and we're going to continue to take some feedback on for the next few days and weeks. But it's unlikely another patch will come out this side of Christmas.
Yeah. Thanks for all the feedback. Really appreciate it, and a big thank you to the team who've been working hard to address the issues, and especially for Matt and the rest of the build team who have been working hard, churning builds out and getting them through QA and turning builds around in less than 24 hours.
There's not been a lot of sleep. Has there from that particular team in the last couple of days. So well done, guys. You're troopers, and we take our hat off to you. It might not be the last time that the engineering and build team get a call out in this live stream tonight. And then today, if you haven't checked it out already, we have announced the next add-on that's coming to Train Sim World 3 in the form of the Holiday Express Runaway Elf. Now, we're all excited for this. It's a nice bit of fun, nice bit of festive frolics and enjoyment, hopefully, for all the family. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the course of this live stream. But if you want a few more details and a nice little teaser video, go to you might be on our YouTube channel already, but if you go to our website, the article will contain all of the details as well as all the pricing information and all that stuff. So we'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, but that is coming next Tuesday, the 13th. We're all quite excited to see how everybody reacts to it. Next up, so this is more of what you can expect over the course of the live stream. I'm rewriting my dissertation here, and I'm basically saying, here is what you can expect to find in the course of this essay.
This is the spoilers section. Everyone turn away if you don't like spoilers.
No, so we're going to be talking about, not in a huge amount of detail, but we've added a couple of expansion packs to the roadmap this time round. One is a UK expansion pack, which are going to be developed by our friends at Rivet. And one of them is a US expansion pack, which we have developed ourselves. So I guess one of the first questions that I wanted to ask on this section, and we might talk a little bit more about it later, is what do we define as an expansion pack? Because I've seen a few different words mentioned by the communities. I've seen enhancement packs, I've seen expansion packs, I've seen all of these kinds of things. What do we mean specifically by an expansion pack?
So if you imagine what we did with the Diesel Legends, this is going to be more like a gameplay thing. So think about some small content of some description, but think of them more as gameplay packs. So this is stuff that will expand the gameplay that you've got on the routes in question, but will also come with some sort of additional content. But don't think of it as a new loco or something like that. These are going to be variations of what's come before, plus focusing on the gameplay.
Okay, cool. Well, more of that in future roadmaps, and we'll be announcing those separate to roadmaps as we have now got into the pattern of doing. We won't be announcing content in the roadmap. It's designed to be giving an update on the things which are being developed and that are being worked on that we have publicly announced at this stage. Okay, before we get into the main meat of the roadmap, just a couple of other things that you can look forward to us talking about over the course of the next hour and a half or so. We've got an update for you on red lights and dispatcher improvements. So that's a big, nice sort of thumbs up. There's been some positive progress made on it. We've got a discussion about Add-ons Manager. We're going to try and take on as much... We're going to do as quick fire an update as we can on some things that we know players will be asking us about. And finally, we're going to kind of have a Q&A session at the end where we're going to try and answer as many of your questions as possible. We've got some already from a forum thread that we loaded or we put up a couple of days ago. But if you have questions, please feel free to hold them on until we do that Q&A session. We'll try and take as many as we can. So... let's talk Holiday Express, shall we? Because that is the big new shiny thing. So in terms of a quick summary, Matt, of what the Holiday Express Runaway Elf is, well, what is it?
So it's, I think, a 1980s living room with a model train track has been set out in the living room. Meanwhile, the elf has been up to no good. And as the train engineer, train driver, depending on how you wish to refer them, is going to undertake a series of missions around the living room. It's brilliant. It's so much different kinds of gameplay compared to what we've ever done in the past. I know that the team have had immense fun coming up with ideas for this.
I've seen it in a few playtests internally. It does look a lot of fun. It looks like there's quite a lot of heart in it. And quite a lot of sort of Christmas festive cheer, which I think, given the year that I know a lot of people have had, is probably right in the right wheelhouse right now. It's irreverent, it's very light Jeopardy, and quite a lot of, I guess, enjoyable gameplay that can come with it as well.
It is just flat out fun. It is different to your normal train route and route and loco type content. This is obviously it is a new route. It is the train, but it's more about what the gameplay is and what you do in that environment and the challenges. And one of the key things with being in a kind of this virtual model railway-ish type environment is that we can do different things, and the team have used it as an opportunity to try and push the boundaries a bit, actually almost as a bit of an R&D for what we might then take into other routes.
Well, you segue nicely onto one of the first things that I was going to talk about, because we have quite a long feature in this month's roadmap where one of our artists, Adam, talks a little bit about how some of the things that have been built on this particular route, things like escalators and elevators, lifts for us in the UK, how all of that kind of asset building, what we call asset building or generating, can be used in future pieces of content as well. So this isn't just in its little own microcosm. This is kind of something that will hopefully help us build more stuff in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's as the content teams make normal routes, they place escalators, and Cross City had the first, I think, animated escalators, which was sort of the first output from the work that Adam had been doing. But now we've got more flexible, scriptable way of doing the escalators rather than them being modelled custom for each time. And then the lifts, again, we wanted to see lifts, so now we've got sort of a base technology we can start building from for lifts. So, and obviously there's the 4x4 vehicle.
You might have seen a little tease in the roadmap as well. Some players had noticed that there was some controls in the settings that have been added in a previous update. A deliberate Easter egg. So some people have seen that. Yeah, there is a little bit of fun related to mastery as well, which again we'll hopefully use some of the technology for in future content as well. We won't give you too many spoilers, but there is a lot of fun to add. One other bit of useful information to know about the Holiday Express route is that you can take your existing locos onto it.
It's scenario planner compatible. Using the scenario planner, you can put your locos on it because the track is normal scale. It's not model rail track. It's normal scale track, which means that you can put any of your rest of your collection on it. The room is utterly gigantic, essentially, which means you can have all sorts of fun putting your trains on and pretending and they look just like model trains when they're in that room as well. So it's a lot of fun. And the track plan has been the track plan can do a lot more than is used by the scenarios. There's lots of passing points and sidings, so actually there's quite a bit of fun to be had doing stuff on that track.
Yeah, and that's obviously been done deliberately so that this functionality is available, because if we had made it sort of small, none of those trains would work.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It was a key thing was to enable you to use the rest of your collection rather than introducing virtual small trains.
Absolutely. Okay. We will be doing a Let's Play of it next Tuesday. I believe Adam and Alex will be taking on a Let's Play of the Holiday Express Runaway Elf. All of the details are on our website, so take a look at it. We're really excited to see what you think of it. There was one more thing that I just wanted to quickly, more general question, but kind of half related to the Holiday Expresses. Obviously, there's a lot of different types of content going on right now. We've had Bremen, we've had Cross City, we've had Holiday Express. How is that being balanced between the teams? Because we obviously have different development teams working on different things, and that's intentional. But at the moment, obviously, there's been quite a condensed amount of content going out in a short space of time. How does that work?
So it's a different team from the main content team. It's actually been led by this Adam's special project team. And sort of like a next project after training centre. And we've had a lot of help from Skyhook, who helped with the actual route building itself.
Okay.
And then Adam's team have led with the gameplay and so on and so forth on there as well. So, and the additional assets. So there's been none of our main route teams have actually been involved in this, as far as I'm aware. It's been predominantly Skyhook and Adam's special projects team. So it's been an interesting side project that was designed to just create some Christmas fun. And I think that I know that's what they've achieved. I really enjoyed my playthrough of it the other day.
It's got a great soundtrack as well. That those of you who saw Ben last week on the live stream, you know he's our music maestro. He's put a lot of the music together for this one as well. So looking forward to seeing how that pans out.
So the only thing I'll say about that is it is really good, and it will be stuck in your ears. It took me 2 weeks to get it out of my head.
Most Christmas songs do, though, to be fair. All the good ones do.
It's very good. It's
all the
very
good ones do. There's a reason why they call it Whamageddon, because you can't get it out of your head afterwards. Okay, Holiday Express, done. Let's talk Add-ons Manager, because we know this is a very pertinent thing that's been... not meandering, that's the wrong word, but going along now for a long time.
We're over a year now.
Over a year, yes. And we know the context of how it's come into being. Sony introduced a limit of 64 gigabytes of memory onto of DLC for a particular game, and obviously some players had broached that, and there was no kind of messaging to say why they'd broached it or what the problem was. So people were missing add-ons in their collection. We got to the root of the problem after about a week and a half, something like that, after speaking with Tony. But there wasn't really an out-of-the-box solution that would help us get through this solution. So we've tried to create something bespoke. We could have done something that was more of a sticking plaster approach, where it was a very short-term solution, but we probably would have needed to have done something again in 6 months to 12 months' time. or we could have taken perhaps a slightly more drastic approach like we have done with the Add-ons Manager, where it dives into the back end of the game, the infrastructure of the game, and hopefully will be a more kind of, let's use a horrible corporate word, future-proof the content moving forward and future-proof your game so that this will never happen again for players. So that's a little bit of context. It's obviously a very complicated, bespoke solution that works specifically with our game. Whereabouts are we in the development of it, Matt? I feel like we have this conversation every roadmap and we have a similar answer, but I believe we have good news.
We are making good progress, very good progress, before anyone jumps to the conclusion of what good news means. We're not there yet, but we are much closer than we were the last time we spoke. So on TSW2 front, everyone's aware the last update went out and everyone seems happy that it's actually in a really good place now. So that gives us a good confidence. TSW3's Add-on Manager is in QA. I think we said that last time as well.
No, I think it was just about to get into,
okay.
or is in the final processes of being developed before going into QA.
So it's definitely in QA, and early feedback on it is looking very positive. That's not to say there aren't being bugs found. There are, but they're much simpler bugs compared to the sorts of things we were finding when in the first iteration of it. Because obviously we've taken the core of the Add-on Manager and brought it across to TSW3. The issues in this case are going to be about the integration with the menu, particularly the fact that we've got new menus that didn't exist in TSW2, like the sort by train sections.
Yeah.
It's very warming that finally not only is it in QA, but that early feedback is actually showing really positive signs. There's a lot of stuff working. Again, as I say, not without some issues which are being looked at, but there's I think we're in a good place. So we're not in a place to put a date on it yet, but this is a good place to be compared to where we could be.
Yeah, and we know that PS5 players have kind of had the brunt of this for a long time. So I think what we're looking to do is prioritize getting the PS5 version of this out first, because it will go to all platforms. We feel like there is a benefit for all platforms because there's going to be a little bit of a performance improvement as well.
Well, it also affects PS4 players now because,
it will do, yeah.
As recently found, PS4 has a 50 DLC limit, so it's not by size; it's per number of DLCs. So, if you're finding you've bought a Bremen, for example, and it's not showing up in your list, if you've got 50 bits of DLC, that might be why. So, again, Add-on Manager will help that as well. So, the good news is the solution for that is already close. So. But we'll put it across all the console platforms because there are benefits across the board.
Yeah. But it's likely at this point that PS5 will come before all other platforms. So PS5, we're going to prioritize to get that out as soon as we possibly can do, as safely as we can, because as we know, if we touch the back-end infrastructure of the game, it touches pretty much everything. So we want to try and make sure it's as solid and as safe as possible before we
That's the key
it.
thing with this is, if anything is wrong with it, it totally breaks your ability to play the game. So it's got to go out right. So that's why we're giving it extra time in QA.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that when we come to do the January roadmap, we will have a really good idea of where it is within the QA cycle. Has it gone really, really well? And are we in a position where actually thumbs up where we can put out a release date for it? Or actually would we be in a position where perhaps there have been a couple of things that we need to take a look at and it might be slightly longer, but we really, really hope, and the initial signs are good, that we'll be coming to you with the former in this instance.
Yeah.
So not the glowing positive that we wanted to be able to share with you tonight, but we're making good progress and we want to try and make sure, as I say, that we get that out to PS5 before we get that out to other platforms, because obviously they've been waiting for it a lot longer than everybody else has been.
So a couple of people asking if it applies to Xbox Series X, Series S, Xbox One. It does. They don't have a limit, but the Add-on Manager means that you're loading less stuff into memory, which means that particularly Xbox One and Xbox Series S, which are starved for memory compared to an Xbox Series X, will have... We'll see. It's not a massive memory saving, but any memory saving could make the difference between the game bugging out. So it's a good thing for all platforms. But if you're on Xbox platform, obviously it's not it's not your highest priority. So that's why we're going to focus on PS5 first, because it's causing active issues there.
Yeah, Liam's asked if we'll get a staggered rollout. Not 100% sure yet. It will depend on how the testing goes. But at the moment, I would say it's a fair shout that PS5 will come out first, and then everything else will follow after that.
Yep.
Okay. Next port of call is Dispatcher and Pathfinder improvements. Now, we've not really used the word Pathfinder very often in the roadmap so far. So use this as a all-encompassing term for red light issues. So we know that there have been a fair amount of add-ons, particularly ones that were released around sort of the rush hour window, where there were some red light issues, perhaps highlighted because of how dense the service pattern was on some of those routes. Now, we've been looking at this for quite a long time, and Matt, I think we've got some good news on progress that's been made for solving some of those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said right from the very beginning of looking into the red light issues, there are multiple causes of red light issues. It's not just a single thing, but they generally have, if something goes wrong with the routing of a train or anything like that, it all ends up in a red light issue. So one of the first causes of of problems, because it manifests in other ways, not just in red lights, is related to this is the pathfinding essentially, and it's what happens is that in the common cases. So a train, when it starts at Paddington and it goes to Reading, that's its path. It starts at Reading, at Paddington, and it works its path out. But if you happen to spawn in on another train or on foot, and this train is 10 minutes into its journey, well, it gets put to the right location for a train 10 minutes into that journey, and then it recalculates the path.
Right. And
in certain circumstances, it could come up with a different answer and send the train down incorrect tracks.
Right.
And that was where some of the problems were occurring.
Well, and I guess if you've got over 1,000 services like you do in London Commuter, then the chances of that happening are significantly higher than, say, a freight route. Or
we found that it even happened on Paddington Reading. It's obviously with the more services, there are more things that can go wrong at any one given time. So we have now fixed that one. We have that one resolved. Obviously not released yet, and it's still going to be integrated and put through QA. But that one's been probably a good 2 months of solid deep diving with some spanners in the undersides of the dispatcher, trying to put a better solution in for that once they figured out what was going on. So that one's a big issue solved. That one probably is going to account for a bunch of issues related to probably UK, possibly German routes, more likely to be relevant for routes that have got more complex pathing. So again, Brighton and so forth, where trains could potentially find different ways of getting from point A to point B, depending on where they start. So that's really good. Very happy with that, and big shout out to Ralph, who's been working on that one. And then that takes us on to the second avenue of investigation, which is it's a more generic problem, but it mostly impacts the Harlem line, where you see trains where you pull up and the train in front isn't moving. There's a blockage up front because two trains aren't moving or something like that. And the cause for that one is related to how in a lot of the US routes, which is somewhat unique to the US compared to other countries, is that it will allow multi-train occupancy, so multiple trains in one signalled section. Most railway networks, that's the definition of a SPAD. It means you've gone past a red signal. So that wouldn't happen under normal circumstances. For example, on the Brighton line, you'd only have one train in a single section. So this issue doesn't occur there. But if you're on the Harlem line, what happens is that the game spawns, puts the trains in their places, and then it iterates through the trains to set them up. And what was happening is it wasn't taking into account the train's position along the line. It was iterating through the trains. So what happens is that we've seen ready examples where the train behind me got the path and the signal that's in front of me is actually for him, not me.
Right.
Which means that when I try to get my path, it just says, "Oh no, there's a train blocked ahead of you." It's actually behind me.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that sounds bonkers. Like, how could it possibly work like that? It does. This is just this is how computers do things, depending on how they've been built. But the fix is to make it take ordering into account, and this is one of the main jobs that's being worked on at the moment.
So, if I understand it right, then Matt, we're kind of at a similar position to what we were with something like Save Game, where we have kind of a core improvement that is designed to improve probably the most drastic of situations on probably about 70 to 80% of instances. And then we have kind of a case-by-case style approach that we're hoping to take, say, with the US routes, where there is a fix and it will probably improve all of those things, but it's going to come separately to this dispatcher improvement.
So these are all
pathfinding improvement.
Yes, but these two issues are both core improvements.
Right.
So it's just that the second core improvement really only applies to multi-occupancy routes, which is pretty much the American ones.
Yeah.
And in this instance, you're only going to see it on Harlem Line because of the sheer density of the traffic. You're much more likely to see multiple trains in a single section.
What about Boston Sprinter? Would that also fall into that category?
Potentially. It does have multi-train occupation, but again, it's a much lower density route than Harlem, which means you're less likely to run into that issue.
Okay.
But potentially, red light issues could have been down to that. And then both any American routes or the UK routes could suffer from this the pathfinding issue. So both fixes are good. In terms of they both represent fairly fundamental steps forward in terms of resolving those issues. And then once those are out, then we can start looking, with your help, hopefully, thank you, at what's left. And they might be content-specific issues or... excuse me, or there may be more issues that we need to find, but those are the two big ones that have been identified. One fixed, one in progress with being fixed, and we want to get those out as soon as possible once they're done, so that we can then reevaluate where we are. Awesome.
So again, by fixed, what we mean is fixed in development. Mm-hmm. They're waiting our QA team to take a look at them. And then once the QA team have given it the thumbs up, then we need to get them into a build for release. And sometimes that can take, that takes obviously a variable amount of time, depending on how impactful some of these changes are going to be. Something like the dispatcher pathfinding improvement will touch a lot of stuff in game. So we need to make sure that is tested appropriately. So obviously not going to talk about timelines tonight, but it's good progress nonetheless, and it's a good now that we've found and solved the issue. That's half of I guess probably about 2/3, 3/4 of the challenge.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because some of these things require some fairly big surgery or fairly careful surgery on some very complex bits of code. We need to be very careful how that's done. So getting one of those issues resolved in the way it is a good thing, and I know the team have a good handle on what the second one needs. So these are two really good issues to see fixed. So
cool. Hence has asked, do we have any slideshows tonight? We don't have any slideshows. It's just going to be me and Matt talking for the entirety of this live stream. So if you don't enjoy that, then you've probably come to the wrong live stream. We have actually had a day of being in a meeting together.
We've been in meetings all day.
Pretty much just the two of us all day together. Can you imagine what that was like for both of us? No. So we are slightly less showy tonight, but we've got our Christmas jumpers on. So
you also need to realise that with the people that have been in here all day for this meeting, it's quite warm in here.
Yeah, it is very warm. It is very warm.
Kind of dying in this jumper.
We didn't really think about that. We've also got some pretty intense lights on as well in the background. So it's not quite on the Train Sim World 3 announce video, which was on the hottest day of the year with no aircon and lights on us.
That was painful.
But anyway, let's put dispatcher / Pathfinder improvements to the side. That's obviously good positive news, and when we have more updates for you, we'll let you know in the roadmap. But we thought, given that we've made a bit of a breakthrough, we'd let you know tonight. It's also covered in the roadmap article as well. So let's briefly touch on special projects. Obviously, we don't have Adam with us here tonight. He will be on the live stream next Tuesday, though, previewing the Holiday Express Runaway Elf route, so you can perhaps ask him any questions there. But special projects, there's There's not a massive amount to update on the special projects team because obviously they were kind of looking after some of the Holiday Express content. We spoke to Adam beforehand. He said the Class 20 and HST livery designer functionality, both of them are now ready for testing, but it's likely that the Class 20 will come before the HST at this stage. That's hopefully reflected in the roadmap order in this time round. So I think the Class 20 has been more of a simple project. The HST, which sounds like a bit of a nightmare.
It's a bit of a beast, yes. But as Adam said, it's over the hill now. So again, it's another one that's on its way.
But there was something that we did actually want to talk about with relation to the special projects team, and this is kind of one of the things that when we were talking about kind of repurposing what Adam's team was all about, this is kind of one of the things that we were talking about. It's not quite the same as what the preservation crew used to do with some of the older TSW 2020 routes, but it's to do with upgrading previous routes. It's similar, but it's not quite the same. So, Matt, can you just give us a quick summary of what they're currently investigating and I guess where we are with progress with them?
Yeah, so without going into any details, because we'll leave the surprises until later on, but one of the things that the team have been looking at is what's involved with doing route upgrades from Train Sim World 2 feature set to Train Sim World 3 feature set, in particular with the new lighting and skies. So they've been looking at a couple of different projects there, and progress is going very, very well, actually. Seeing some really positive results, and on the routes in question, beautiful screenshots coming from being flown around internally. So so looking forward to sharing some of what's going on there. But we've started to build up a good document now, which kind of outlines all the step-by-step processes that are involved and a better idea of the timings that are involved in those things. This doesn't mean we plan to go through and do everything at all. We've never said we would do that, but we also didn't say we wouldn't do it for some projects. So it is something that we are keen to look at, and the initial investigations have gone very well.
So I'm looking at scripts in front of me, and I'm seeing TOD 3 and TOD 4, and I don't really know what they mean, Matt. And I think we have referred to them a couple of times in live streams and on the forums and things like that, and I never really know what you mean by it. So can you just give us a quick summary of what TOD 3 and TOD 4 are, please?
TOD stands for time of day. And 3 means version 3, 4 means version 4. So we in an Unreal level, we have a component called a TOD v3 component and a TOD v4 component. What do? They give you the skies and the lighting.
Right.
So if you take an Unreal level and you delete the TOD 3 component, it loses its skies and lighting. You drop the TOD 4 on, you get the new ones. And then a million of things broke, which is then what you have to then go and fix and rebalance and tune. And that is the crux of the work. So it's, so that's the difference. This is, when we say upgrading from TOD 3 to TOD 4, we mean lighting and skies.
Right. Okay, cool. And once we've got a full rundown of any routes that are involved in that project and or the features which will be included, as we say, it's likely to be skies and lighting at this stage. We will let you know.
Yep.
Cool. Let's go to very quick update on the partner program bits and pieces. So these are our third-party friends that we work with. We've announced an expansion pack for a UK route with our friends at Rivet. And again, once we've got that properly in the roadmap announced, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but expect a similar kind of vibe to what we were saying earlier in regards to Diesel Legends.
Yep.
And then the only other real update, everybody else is getting their heads down and actually getting some work done, which is quite nice. But the only other update is we want to give a quick shout out to Mike and Lucas of TSG, because they've done a lot of work helping us out on Bremen Oldenburg, and also generally with some of our first party German content as well, which has obviously meant that some of the work that they've been doing on the 420, for example, has perhaps been a little bit slower than I think anybody would have liked it to have been. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the two of them, and obviously the whole Train Sim Germany team who have done a really good job with us in the last few months. Yeah,
definitely. I know Mike has been working some long hours to get some of the stuff he's been working done. So appreciated. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Okay. And then we have some updates on areas which we thought we would give you a little bit of a quick fire on, because some of them are going to be, they're in progress, they're being investigated. Some of them are going to have a little bit more context for them, but we thought we should give you an update on them anyway. So first of all, Spirit of Steam physics. Now, we know this is a very pertinent thing. We've seen it mentioned a couple of times in the chat already, and we've talked about it a couple of times in previous roadmaps. Do we have an update on Spirit of Steam physics?
Yeah, so in particular, this is repairing the issues that were introduced with the TSW3 upgrade, but it also improves some component elements of the simulation related to draft.
Yep.
That's the scope of it. It's there have been other things we've talked about in the past, like manual firing and so forth. This isn't that. This is mostly about getting it working properly again, but stepping it up with a better draft simulation. That is done. From development perspective, and is on the list to go into QA. So again, not too long, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be this side of Christmas,
No.
but we are hopeful it will be early next year.
Yeah, very early. Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna.
I'm chucking a very. I'm chucking a very.
Oh, wow.
I'm chucking a very and very carelessly.
You've heard this one here first, exclusive from Matt Pedalston tonight. But yeah, we appreciate it's been something that again has been a bit of a long time coming. But we could have reverted the fix, but we thought it was better to do it in this way where we've actually offered an improvement to it. It
would have actually taken. We looked at it, and it would have taken longer to revert and test the revert had gone okay and not created new issues, because obviously when you revert, you're in danger of doing too much.
Yeah.
And other levels of code have gone up as well, versus actually just finishing it, which means that actually you'll be in a better place than you were in TSW2 version of Spirit of Simulation. So we're in the right place. It's taken a bit long to get here, but we'll be getting that out, and it is a better simulation.
Yeah. Liam said, I thought JD was the leaker, Matt. Well,
I just threw out a very...
taking that hat and put it onto your head. It's nice. For those people that are watching live, exclusive there tonight. So Spirit of Steam AI SPADs as well. So we'll stay on the Spirit of Steam theme. That rhymes. So obviously that's been an area of discussion amongst the community. Do we know what the cause of the problem is, and what is the current sort of timeline on us? Not timeline, because we're not going to give dates or whatever, but where are we at with
So it's under current investigation. There's an engineer actively looking into that one. All of the AI SPADs that we've tracked so far, based on your feedback, thank you very much, have ended up being related to trains coming off one of the turntables and tripping a light. I think it's the Liverpool turntable. So that's what the element of focus is on, is why it's doing that. So, but there is an engineer working on it actively, so I'm hoping that it'll be fixed and ready to go into the QA pile soon.
Okay, cool. So that will be after the physics upgrades have gone in, I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the physics upgrades are done. So
cool. Achievements. Now, again, we know we get tagged into the forum threads which talk to us about various achievements that have been in various different states of working or not working over the course of a period of time. And we have flagged all of those. Thanks for everybody who's been contributing to the forum thread that has been talking about. I think there are about 4 or 5 currently that are not operating as they should be, or there's a collectible that's perhaps not obtainable, which means an achievement can't be completed. Where are we on those, Matt?
Going through the list and checking which ones are cross-platform failures, which ones are failures on single platform, or which ones it is the achievement system that's not working, or which ones are just because you can't finish your tutorial or because you can't get a collectible, and then getting those issues looked at. So we did the Cadbury's collectible on Cross City,
yes,
which means you can now collect all of the collectibles on that one. Yeah, so it's the team are making progress, understanding the scope of the problem on that one, and starting to get some fixes underway as well.
Cool. Performance improvements, I can probably take this one. I think we've seen over the course of the last few patches, I think we had a little patch note summary actually in the roadmap as well. So in case you've missed any of the patches that have happened in the last month or so, we're going to try and keep that as a regular feature throughout the roadmap coming forward, so you don't miss anything. You can probably see through that There's probably not one silver bullet for performance if you're experiencing poor performance on a particular route. What we're looking to do is actually where we see opportunities to improve it or optimize content, we are taking them and we are then sort of improving as we go through. There was an improvement, I think, to the Dostos and the AI lighting in Dostos. Which,
they were shadow casting lights, which was causing major performance problems.
Yeah. And we're also investigating things like custom liveries as well, because I think that when we're seeing particularly 8th gen platforms having issues with performance, when they remove custom liveries or they remove liveries from custom liveries from their route, the performance seems to go up. So we're just trying to work out if it's a specific livery or there's different types of livery that are causing problems.
This is something that we could really benefit from help from the community on, because in all of our repros, the performance on the Xbox One is steady, whereas when we're seeing screenshots, even in Xbox Series X, in one case, someone tweeted a video from it where the game was pausing every few seconds for a few seconds. That's not just low frame rate, then it's not just stuttering, that's actually freezing for extended periods. And as you say, removing the liveries seemed to cure it, and that's obviously not a viable solution. So we're trying to work out what that is, but we haven't been able to repro it. So we looked at all of the videos. We've tried to repro it by downloading the appropriate liveries. And again, nothing's causing a problem for us. So, which is how it goes in dev. It's, when you put it on a debug environment, all the problems scurry away and hide. So if you can get us or help us with reproduction steps for any issues, then that would go a long way to helping us. So we definitely want to look at that. If you are playing the game and the game freezes for several seconds, that is not normal. Please help us. Please help us and tell us what's going on there, and we will do ourselves trying to get that fixed.
Yeah, that debug environment reminds me of when you have a problem with your computer or your laptop and you reach out to the IT team and say, can you help me out, please? They go onto your PC, and just about as they go onto that, it gets fixed. So IT team are like, well, what you're talking about is completely fine and correct.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that.
Absolutely. It's incredibly frustrating because we can see video evidence the problem is there. No one is saying the problem isn't there, but we can't reproduce it. If you can't reproduce it, you can't fix it. Yeah. It's a real challenge. So yes, if you can help us with any reproduction steps on that would be really, really useful. And we can get some more people on that. Yeah,
cool. TSW2 Preserved Crew releases. What are we looking at for that? Because I know that obviously that's been a little bit overdue on our end.
It is. There is a growing backlog of things on there which are waiting to go out. One of the things that we do is whenever we fix back catalogue bugs and TSW3, a lot of those fixes you've already had in various releases, we actually fix them in TSW2 and port them forward. So all of those fixes that you've had on TSW2 are waiting to be released on TSW2. So it's not fix it twice. This is, we fix it once and we fix it in TSW2. Some of the challenges related to around it's one of these things sometimes I refer to problems as being silly problems, or it's one of those. It's about build infrastructure and so forth, about the fact that building a completely separate version of the game requires some different resources compared to just having one. So we're working through that so that we can get builds of TSW2 made and uploaded. I don't have a plan for when that's going to be completing, but it is still on the plan to do. It has not gone away. We'll be looking at getting some fairly sizable updates, I think, for content match in the line with everything that's already been out for TSW3. Certainly content-wise, when it comes down to code changes and fixes like dispatchers, derailment, so forth, we're going to look at each of those changes and see how those backport into the code, and if we can, then we'll try and get some of those across as well. But we'll keep you updated.
Okay. My kind of follow-up question was going to be, do we think after these kind of mega patches have come out, because they will be quite sizable, I would imagine, do we foresee supporting sort of TSW2 when we're doing, as you say, some of these improvements that might be to our TSW2 routes or TSW 2020 routes? Do you foresee that those moving forward will also be ported back to TSW2, or do we at some point need to have a cut-off?
Not quite sure I follow the question. Try it again.
So is there a point in the future where Train Sim World 2, I'm not going to say will cease to be supported, but when we're cutting builds at the moment, we're looking at, we're squirreling away this fix for TSW2 because we're working on TSW2. Is there going to be a point where we kind of move away from that process and actually look at TSW3 as kind of the first port of call for some of this stuff?
Potentially. I mean, at the moment, the direction is fix it on TSW2 and then forward port it to TSW3. And at some point, it may become that the majority of fixes can't be done that way anymore because the paths have come too far apart. And in that case, then that would be the sort of start for that. But at this point in time, that's not something we're looking at, but expect it to happen.
Right. Okay. And finally, in kind of the quick fire, in fact, there was one that I haven't included on here that a couple of people have mentioned in the chat that I wanted to talk about. But first of all, let's go for derailing improvements, because we released the first batch of the derailing improvements. So we have 3 different kind of areas in which we're looking to improve at the moment. First of which went out, I think it was the start of last month, but we also have a couple of other kind of areas that we're exploring, one of which is derailing under harsh braking circumstances, and also derailing in kind of coupling buffering situations. And you know better than I can, and probably can explain it better than I can. But what are those 2 particular examples, and what is the progress on both of those?
So the first one that went out was actually related to technical term. There was a normal being inverted on some bits of track, and that just sent the physics into a wobble. So that's actually cured quite a lot of the derailment issues from looking at the forums. So that's been really good to see. The second issue, the one that I believe is done, but and waiting the test integration, is related to braking under harsh situation, so harsh braking. And what that means is that when, particularly if you've got you've got a long train and you're applying the brakes at the front of the train, then obviously you've got the wagons pushing up against you. And what would happen there sometimes is the wagons would lift a little bit and the train would consider it derailed, when in reality it really hasn't. And it probably shouldn't even be lifting in the first place. So that's been a round that's been done, and is again waiting to get put through the setup. And then the last iteration is where we've talked previously about some things are core, some things are content. The first 2 issues there were core. This one, third-ish one, is a content thing. So this is where Diesel Legends, for example, there's at least one service where when you start in an 08 inside Paddington Station, the first thing that happens is the 08 springs itself off the track. And it's because it's actually up too close. It's actually overlapping the buffers of the Mark 1, the Mark 2 coaches, and it kind of forces itself underneath them. That's just a content issue. That's not a core issue, and we just need to attack those issues one at a time. There's another one on Diesel Legends where the coaches are actually over the top of buffer stops. Yeah. And again, the minute you couple to them, it will explode because the physics get interact on that and tries to resolve it. So the third pass is going to be looking through those issues and getting those resolved.
Cool. So the final one that I was going to quickly touch on was Creators Club, because I think we've seen a few players have issues where you've got the spinning wheel of doom when you're subscribing to liveries and a few other bits and pieces. What's the reason for that? I think there are other couple of things Creators Club wise that are a little bit perhaps specific for tonight, but I know that was one in particular that we've been sort of trying to get a little bit of a lid on. And I think we've got a reason why that's happening, and we've got kind of a next steps with that as well, haven't we, Matt?
Yeah, so the where you try and do a subscription and it just sits there spinning, generally that is because there is actually a 100 item limit that you can subscribe to, but the game is not telling you that. So it's making the request to the server saying no, and the game is just saying, well, I'll carry on trying, and just sits there. So we're going to be correcting that, putting the error messages and so forth in. Now, whether or not the 100 item limit needs to change is a separate thing. The first priority is to make the game make sense and make sure that it's not getting lost at all. So if you're getting that situation, find something you're not using, unsubscribe to it, and you'll probably find the other thing you're trying to do will work just fine. Cool.
Okay. So yeah, that'll take us through kind of to our quick-fire updates for this particular roadmap. That's kind of given us a broad outline of what's going on, what we're working on. Important to note that the Dovetail offices do close around Christmas time. So during the kind of, I guess, up until Christmas Eve, until probably like the 2nd or the 3rd of January, everybody in the company or nobody in the company is at least kind of supposed to be working. So if there is anything that kind of goes within that window, then it's unlikely there will be any patches that fall kind of later than, I guess, the end of the week of the 19th, something like that. Just because we wouldn't want to put anything out in that final week before Christmas if we're not able to solve or fix it.
No, quite.
Cool. Okay, so player questions. We've got quite a long time for this tonight, so I'm looking forward to seeing what people have to throw at us tonight, and we'll try and answer as much as we can. So I've got a few from the forums already, which we can touch on. But please feel free to throw some questions into the chat. We'll try and grab as many as we can. Obviously, the usual caveats apply. If you ask when something is coming, what the next American route is, when are we going to find out about XYZ? The answer is going to be, we'll reveal it on a roadmap. Or sorry, no, we won't announce anything on a roadmap, but you will find out on a roadmap. So if it's not on this roadmap, then we won't be able to give you the information on it. So that's my caveat. Okay, first question is from Matt Jam CA. I never know how to pronounce Matt's name, so I thought it was Man Jam Ka, but I think it might be Matt Jam CA. So Peninsular Corridor timetable. Obviously, that has had an issue related to services not appearing when TSW3 launched, or the patch with TSW3 launched. Do we have any updates on that at all? Because I know it was a particularly knotty issue to try and sort in the first place, and now obviously this is complicated, perhaps even further.
Yeah, it was that was a tricky one. It was very unique in the way that it worked because of the way we wanted to make it work with the livery designer as well. So. It's not resolved yet. It's still in the list of things to look at. But the team have a handle on what they need to do. I think to actually resolve it, and it's proving that theory now and then getting it done. Because it's potentially has an impact on other things, which is more the concern. It's not just fix that one thing. It's because it's a change to the UI, a change to a load of configuration. It's slightly more complicated. So we have a handle on it, and we'll look to get that resolved as soon as possible.
Yeah. Sasha's asked any update on the BR420. We talked about TSG earlier on in the live stream. So no tangible progress has been made at this stage. Mike and Lucas have been helping us out quite a lot on some of the first party German stuff. So as soon as there is more information, I'm sure both us and Mike would be glad to share that information.
Oh yeah, as soon as there's information, we'll share it. Until then, assume that work is either ongoing or other things have taken priority.
Chief Longshin asked lots and lots of questions that were not necessarily relevant for tonight's live stream, but they did ask one that I did quite like the look of, actually. And I've seen it mentioned a couple of times in the forums already. But what can we expect to see as a step change in next year in terms of bug fixes and a progress update or tracker? A couple of people have talked about having sort of a publicly available bug tracker, like a Trello board or something like that. I've seen a couple of other developers in the past do it. What's your thought on that, Matt? Because I've got my opinions, but I kind of want to chat to you first and get your thoughts on it.
I'm generally a fan of that kind of thing. I've played some games in the past which have got that kind of thing going on themselves, and as a player, I've appreciated that level of engagement. So it's not always as easy as that, and they require a lot of management as well. So it's the last thing you want to do is put that information up there and have it be out of date or incorrect, or so it's. Whatever we do, we've got to make sure that it's sort of got an end-to-end plan or strategy as well, so that it is actually as valuable as you would expect it to be and as useful and updated. So it's, I love that kind of thing, but they don't come cheap, free or easy.
No, I mean, we've done a little bit of research on this because I don't necessarily disagree that it's a bad idea, but I think for all of the reasons that Matt lists, it's not a massively practical one. It relies quite heavily on making sure that in quite a fast-paced environment as we work in, that things don't fall through the cracks and whatnot. And whilst that might not necessarily always happen, it might happen on occasion. And I think I've seen, I think Twitch did it a long time ago, where they had a publicly visible bug tracker or progress tracker on some of their things, and it ended up being quite unwieldy, quite difficult to manage. And I think by the end of it, a lot of players were like, well, what's the point in doing this? Like, why have you gone into this when actually nothing is ever moving, or nothing is changing, or nothing's tangibly moving? And that's kind of why we do the roadmaps in the way that we do, because we were doing them fortnightly, and we were finding that there wasn't really any tangible, or on most occasions, there wasn't really anything tangible that we could talk about that seemed interesting or different, or because our dev cycles don't necessarily work in 2 weekly sprints or whatever, that they work in a slightly different way. So I think that bug tracker would also have that effect as well, where it's very difficult, particularly if you've got some of the higher level things like a red light issue or something like that, or a save game or something like that. It is in danger of being there for quite a long time without moving into a done or QA ready or whatever format. So,
and one of the challenges is how an issue is understood or known in the community. The red light issue,
yes,
and the dozens of bugs raised internally to cover this line of code not being right, that line of code not being right, that were found or are raised and so forth, that might be relevant and put under that umbrella, or overlap and intersect with it but not be entirely it. And what you'd end up with is you either get a super granular list of tickets which you might not understand the context of. It's one of the things that we have to do, for example, when we give the change lists, the updates to JD, the community team.
Hello.
So we send out the list of all the changes that have gone into it, and then we go through and we have to rewrite and explain and group things together. And so actually, don't worry about those. That's core nonsense. Oh, actually, that's what these three things mean. And there's a lot of interpretation then going on to put it into terms that are actually make sense outside of knowing what the internals on the code system are. So you've got to go from one system to the other. And the minute it's not the actual bug tracking database, which would have just so much detail you wouldn't be able to relate to it, you then got translation required, and then that immediately means you've then got to try and manage that and so. And it's not to say that it's impossible or couldn't be done or anything like. It's just that you don't go into it without a plan for how you're going to keep it up to date. Because if it's immediately going to become invalid, just don't go down that route in the first place.
Well, and I also think I don't want to get too much into the minutiae on this, but it would be, I think, a person's job to maintain that.
Yeah.
To maintain that, and I think that's probably better.
That's one of the things that we stopped doing with the roadmap, because we used to have a lot of minutiae of bug reports in the roadmap, and it ended up being more wrong than right, so it was just not easier, but it was more correct to do what we've done right now. One of the reasons we made this change with the roadmap a while back was to sort of talk about things at a higher level, talk about the sort of the bigger burning issues at this level, and just give you the updates on those ones, rather than all the minutiae.
Yeah, and what we'll do with the roadmaps moving forward, and we've done it in this roadmap actually, is a quick summary of all of the patches that have happened recently, so you can keep up to date with all of that stuff. And if there's anything particularly pertinent that you want to talk about or you want to ask about in a roadmap live stream, we are hopefully an open book where possible. We'll give you as much information as we can do. So I think that feels like a more sensible, manageable way of doing something like this than perhaps managing something that is quite as, not detailed, but maybe complicated as sort of a live tracker. So I know we've kind of skirted around that a little bit, but we hope we've kind of answered that question in a roundabout way. It's something that we have considered, and it's something we've discussed, but I don't think it's something that we're quite set up at the moment to be able to maintain or manage. And I don't think it's something that would be particularly useful in the way that we're currently kind of putting things together.
It's I also don't want to do anything that would derail the team from actually delivering the fixes, because in order to deliver a fix, we need to go through and do a load of paperwork. It's my primary concern is keeping the team focused on fixes.
Yeah, I mean, and a good example of this perhaps is that obviously we put the patch out for Bremen Oldenburg yesterday, and it was quite a big patch. There was quite a lot of stuff in it, and it actually we got the list of all of the fixes that have come through, and it took Alex, I think, in my team, probably about 2/3 of a day to translate that into something that is a bit more player facing. So not with all the dev detail, not with all of the reproduction steps, all of that kind of stuff. So imagine that sort of times X on it.
Constantly.
Well, that's why I say.
Because it's alive. Rather than being a published document, it would be constant. So it would be for every time we update things, it would then need the tracker to be updated. So it'd be, it's, I would argue, less practical than it might first seem. It seems like an easy thing to ask for, but it's, but it's more harm than good.
So it's not something that we haven't considered. I suppose the part B to that question that we maybe glossed over a little bit in terms of step change next year for bug fixes. Obviously, we've released quite a lot of patches in the course of the last sort of 3, 4, 5. Well, actually, probably since the start of TSW3, really. Do we think that kind of level and cadence of improvements to the game, whether it's for a recent release or whether it's for back catalogue content, do we think that level or cadence is sustainable? How often do we think we want to update with patches moving forward?
As necessary. If we need, as we like Bremen needed a couple of fairly urgent patches done to it, and the team stepped up and delivered those. For back catalogue stuff, we've obviously got the TSW2 stuff waiting in the wings, and special projects team. I'm looking at getting them back onto starting to look through issues again shortly as well. So they'll start seeing another set of patches coming through from there at some point. So in terms of what that cadence is, I don't have a particular goal in mind. It's what I do have a particular goal in mind for is resolving the bugs, particularly the bugs which are causing things to not work. Rather than some of the bugs are, they're bugs, but the lower detail things or flying things and things like that. Whereas, scenario can't be completed, red lights and train doesn't work, that kind of thing. Anything like that is where I want to focus the attention. So, look at that first stuff first. So, yes, want to do a series of fixes, but I don't have a particular schedule for it. It's we're going to work as hard as we can.
Yeah. Defades asked about Steam. We talked about Steam probably about 20 minutes ago. So if you want to just go back through the VOD, we'll timestamp this afterwards, probably tomorrow morning, just so that you can take a look at the bit that you think is most relevant for you. One of the other areas that was mentioned a couple of times is around passenger behaviour. Obviously, we updated passenger behaviour with the rush hour update 16 months ago, something like that. And we're seeing it's something that is having sort of variable success on different routes. Is there a kind of reason why some of the passenger behaviours are different across the different routes, and why we might see some strange things going on occasion?
So we're actually having some challenges with the Unreal Navigation Mesh tech, so the team are sort of taking that to one side to try and just once and for all work out what it is. One of the things that we're finding is that the system for setting up passengers is overcomplicated in a lot of ways, and there's no cross-check, so it's easy to get one of a number of complex steps wrong. But even when we've got it right, in some cases stations aren't behaving correctly still, so which is more down to the way that the nav mesh tech works. So that's being looked at the moment, and we're trying to work out what's going on there. But yeah, we need to see some more improvements to that. At the moment, nobody's looking at any other elements of that stuff. There's other bugs being looked at as a higher priority.
Cool. One of the questions that actually I was going to say for a little bit later, but Mr. JB's asked already. We've talked a lot about things that are, inverted commas, dev complete or fixed, but perhaps waiting for a QA or for testing. What does that mean, and how can we perhaps get rid of some of the logjam perhaps that we're seeing where things are going into QA and perhaps taking a little longer than we'd like?
So going into QA at this point, some of the stuff we've been talking about hasn't got into QA. It's sitting, it needs builds of the game to be made across 7 different platforms, and then go into QA for those things. So it's waiting its turn in the queue for that side of things. And one of the things about enhancing our build infrastructure will be to help try and grease the wheels on that stuff, because it's actually quite significant amounts of disk space required for all of this stuff to work, and the build resource. I think we've got 9 build servers now or something silly. So it's getting some of that resolved is what's going to make a big difference, I think, to the to trying to get some of this stuff, this logjam, cleared. We've been in this situation with the logjam before, and it's happened again. So we just need to get it cleared and enhance the build infrastructure.
Cool. So I'm just trying to go through some of the other questions in the chat. Sorry, my headphones have just gone a little bit funky. So if anybody's experienced any audio challenges, please let me know. But my headphones sound horrific at the moment. So
restart voice meter.
Yeah, we'll come back. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to restart our audio software. I'll be back in a sec. Matt, entertain them.
Hello. What do you think? What do you think of this jumper that my wife made? It's very good, isn't it? Thank you very much, Si. That's not an encouragement.
My headphones are fixed. Woohoo! It's always when you're live, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always when we're live. That's probably been live for about the last week. That's probably that piece of software has probably been open for a week and we've had no problems. As soon as you go live, there we go. Third-party stuff, Anders. Well, it depends what you mean by near future. We've obviously got quite a lot of content on the roadmap, and you're not going to trick us into giving any indication of when any of that stuff is coming. But there is stuff on the roadmap. Take a look at it if you haven't already.
Yep.
Chief Lungshin's asked about any bid stack updates.
So we've got the latest version of the latest round of fixes in with bid stack at the moment. It went in Monday, I think, and I'm waiting to hear feedback from that. Hopefully we finally got this resolved and we can get it all turned on. But yeah, it's been a long and slightly frustrating process, but here we are.
Yes. So there's a question that I guess is a little bit of an elephant in the room that maybe we should have talked about at the start, but obviously we've released a couple of Quickfire patches in a row for Bremen, which we hope have got their content into a really sort of positive state. Those are coming on for console slightly either towards the end of this week or start of next. But obviously we are in a position where that's happened. We've had 2 patches in sort of 2 days that kind of get the quality bar up to perhaps the level that we wanted it to be. What kind of how did we get to the stage where, as I say, we had those improvements in and they weren't part of that kind of launch build? And obviously, as you can see for some of the feedback the players have had, there has been a lot of players that have really enjoyed the content and really liked it, and we've seen lots of lovely, nice comments and stuff. But there's also been some people that have quite rightly talked about attention to detail and some of the things that were challenging. So, how have we got to that point, Matt?
So that's one of the things that we're investigating at the moment, is because I remember we did a sign-off review for the route, and we looked at the outstanding bugs in the bug tracker, and it didn't show any problems. There was no outstanding issues that we needed to be concerned about, and clearly that was exactly not what the case was. So that is one of our big areas of investigation at the moment, is understanding what that is, what's led to that situation happening, and correcting that, because that's unacceptable. I'm really upset about how that went out, and so for the team, to be honest, as when they saw what the situation was, which is why everyone has been stepping up, working long hours to get these patches out. It's yeah, it's something that we're looking into. This has been, a bad release, and it didn't hit anyone's expectations, including ours, in a lot of ways, which is a shame because actually the route is cracking. It's really fun. There's a lot of stuff on there, but it was just some really like the PZB light flashing stuff that should have been picked up that wasn't picked up, that's being that we're trying to work out where that went wrong, and we're going to get the appropriate training and backup steps in there to and hire if we need to hire additional people with more specialized skill sets in them. We're going to get this resolved.
Yeah, and I mean, in the large part, it kind of has been resolved. Obviously, some of the damage from, say, I don't know, review scores, whatever, has happened. But by and large, we believe the current patch has taken it up to a much better level and much more. I'm seeing a lot of positive feedback from players after these couple of patches. So if you haven't downloaded them already, or you've not touched it since Tuesday, download the patches. Let us know what you think afterwards. What else should we ask? Lots of people asking, what is the new US route? I specifically said, don't ask that question, guys. Oh, I'm trying to gather some questions. Chief Longshin asks, so this is one of the forum ones that I didn't ask earlier, was do we have an update on auto testing?
Other than some cosmetic changes to the tool, there's been no notable steps forward on it. It's still in use, obviously, but it's the actual functionality hasn't changed from what we described previously.
Okay, yeah,
it's got a nice, pretty web interface now for driving it, but that's about it.
And if you want a little bit more information about auto testing and what we're looking at and how we're looking at, we did a really long section. I think it was in the last roadmap, which seems a long time ago now, but I think we did it in the last roadmap stream. There's a long section about sort of the tool itself, what it will allow us to do moving forward, and kind of next steps possibly for it. So just take a look at that, because that'll explain it more than I can by waffling on for 20 seconds. So
Mod Derek's asking if the upgrades we're talking about as potential for TSW compatible routes with new lighting and skies, would that include the snow, the rising snow? It is one of the things being looked at. It potentially involves repainting all of the routes, terrain textures, so that's quite a considerable job. But the team were looking at if there's more sensible ways of doing that, perhaps automatic or. So I'm not going to commit to anything at the moment, but it's something we're looking into. It's part of the process at this point is to work out what is practical, what is what requires an extensive amount of work, and then we can come up with a sort of a list of, okay, this is what we can do practically and sensibly.
Absolutely. Liam's asked about the latest London commuter rush hour passengers, because that is obviously on the roadmap. I think it might currently hold the record for the longest current standing in the roadmap, I think. We have answered this one a few times before in previous live streams, and I think it's a question of making sure that the performance on the route is at the intended level before we add more strain into it.
Yeah, there's the performance improvements we need to look at, like removing the collision on the third rail, and anything else we need to look at hasn't been completed yet. The addition of passengers will come once that's there.
Oh, Rev said that'd be the 420. Oh, I knew there was one that was going to be a 420. Sorry, that's been on the longest, I think. Okay, it's a good question, Night Rail. I think we've perhaps answered something like this before, but in terms of, we go back to passengers. Are we looking to diversify the passenger, what would we call it? Passenger model, I guess, or passenger variety? They've suggested things like kids and wheelchair users. And we've had a couple of discussions about something like this, haven't we, before? I think the general consensus is we'd like to, but there are obviously challenges that come with things like different heights of people, and wheelchairs in particular, I know you said were a particular challenge.
One of the problems with... one of the challenges with having fully animated people with varying disabilities is the real world routes and stations have extensive facilities to support them. And to make it, and so those things would then need to be modelled and take an existing station significantly longer to make. Now that's not a reason not to do it, but it's a factor to consider when doing that. The other thing is then how does a wheelchair get on a train? And that involves putting the ramp out, the wheelchair getting on, so on and so forth. Again, not a reason not to do it, but it's quite a significant bit of extra complexity to consider. That said, when we added diorama tech into Rush Hour, one of the goals for that was to be able to add set scenes which include characters of any disability or age or anything like that can be added, because we don't have to then integrate them into the non-player character, the NPC system. They would just be idle animations, or could be any animations essentially. So we've got a lot more flexibility with what we can do with that, and I know that the character team at the moment are looking at exactly that. They're looking at what we can do with, this is investigation and R&D at the moment, but they're looking at what we can do with the character diorama stuff, because we've really not used it since we did it in Rush Hour. I've seen people asking, where is it, and it's just like, actually the team haven't been using it. The range of dioramas hasn't expanded, so the character team have started looking at what they can do, because they've now got dedicated, whereas previously there was no dedicated resource for characters. There is now a couple of very talented people looking at characters, and I've seen some of the stuff they've come up with, and it's quite a significant step up. So we're looking to see what we can do with dioramas to introduce some additional variety on the platforms, and then we can see where things go from there. We have a lofty roadmap of what we want to do with characters, but we'll come to that as and when it's not pie in the sky.
An internal roadmap, just to clarify as well, not this roadmap.
There are multiple roadmaps, and they all go up to make long lists. And
do you know what? I'd love to have guide dogs and visually impaired NPCs as well. I think that'd be great. Partly because I love dogs, but
well, the diorama system means that we can do things like that. You can do partial animations in sort of sections. You could, for example, have animation of someone walking up, buying a coffee at a coffee stand, and then sitting down and drinking it. It's, we don't need you integrate anything like that into the NPC tech, which is where things get incredibly difficult. Yeah. Now, that's not to say creating that animation is not hard in the first place, but that's more of an understood challenge that you can scope and fit into a project as needed. So we've got some cool ideas of what we want to do and where we want to take it, and character team are looking at it right now.
While we're on the subject of characters, this is one of my questions. Sorry, everybody who's asking questions here, but one of the things that I really liked about Cross City was the implementation of, and it sounds really silly, but the cats. I thought that they were a really fun little addition to the route that offered a little bit of kind of collectability, offered a little bit of personality to the route, and it kind of, you could see that the developers had a lot of fun with it. I know it happens on a case by case or a route by route basis, but are those kinds of little touches of additional fun and perhaps collectability something that we'd look to include on future routes too?
Potentially. In the case of the cats, that was literally one of the developers, one of the route environment artists, I think it was, did it one evening in his own time, because he thought that would be a fun thing to add to the routes. And I love seeing when the team get so engaged in a route that they start thinking about other things like that. The donkey has become a tradition in the environment team.
Of course, the donkey, yeah.
It's this donkey is, there's a spreadsheet maintaining names and backstories of all these donkeys. So there's and it is a chalice that is passed from environment artist to environment. Like, you'll be doing the donkey in this route, and everyone's like, yay! It's kind of they have a lot of fun with that stuff. So that's kind of a really it's a really fun area for people to get involved in. But rather than, what I don't want to do is for any of that to detract from the time taken to get the route to the right standard. So we don't actually plan that stuff in. That's kind of like if the environment artists are so moved that they want to do something like that, I'm all for it. But actually, what I want is more time spent on the core of the route itself and making the sort of the route look good. So don't want. So if anyone's fearing, cats mean less detail on other things, not the case. Like I said, in this instance, that was one of the environment artists did it himself one evening because he was really keen on that, and I'm really grateful. I think it's really, really cool. But no, I don't want to do it at the detriment to the route quality overall.
Yeah, I mean, DOGG said, let's keep a train simulator about trains. And actually, it absolutely that's the centerpiece of obviously what we choose to do.
But you're allowed to have a bit of fun too.
Yeah, I think that I'd agree with that.
As long as it doesn't get in the way, and as long as it's something you can take or leave, and the time and the people and the time allocated on the route is still getting spent on the route. Little fun diversions like that. Let the team have their fun. It means that your team that are building your route are. They're really getting into actually what they it's not a clinical thing. They're actually putting this is where the art comes into it rather than just the CAD drawings being brought to life. It's I love seeing that stuff in because it means the team it's confirmation the team are super engaged in what they're creating.
I'm liking the chat discussion right now about having a dog train and a cat train, donkeys in wheelchairs, cats taking over the world. This is what I wanted from a roadmap live stream. We should get back to the nitty gritty though. Liam's asked a good question actually. What enabled you to default save game to be enabled by default? I guess we were talking about in a couple of roadmaps about sort of that threshold of when we'd be happy of making it sort of the default option again. Now, we know there's still work to do. Going to caveat that right now because I've seen obviously people saying sometimes their wipers are off, the reverser's been taken out of their loco when they've restarted. But what kind of took it over to that threshold where we were happy with putting it as the default option?
Looking at the feedback coming in from the forums as we were putting out the social media and looking at as we put those patches out and seeing people saying I've turned it on and this is working and that's working and getting the general feeling it generally works now rather than it not being a feature given how many people were concerned about it not being a feature and people who are not on social media not knowing that there was something you could potentially turn on for it. It's kind of like it's at the point now where it mostly works right. Let's make it on, turn it on for everybody and then carry on working on it.
Okay, cool. There's a few suggestions about creating the Dovetail Donkey, the backstory side of things. I might see if we can include it in a future roadmap, a little feature on the Dovetail Donkey. Someone try and remind me because I will have forgotten by the time we get to January because it's a long way away at this point. Chief Longshan's asked about checkpoints as well. Yes, that's something that I've seen mentioned a couple of times with regards to save games. Are we going to reintroduce checkpoints?
Yeah, I believe so. I thought that had actually been looked at. I need to go and find out where that's got to.
Cool. Any plans to bring new operators to TSW such as SWR and Avanti?
Well, they would be route announcements we're not going to be making right now, wouldn't they? Yeah.
TrackMind
always looking for new exciting things to do.
Always looking at ways to get us to spill our secrets. You've got the right people on the stream to do it as well. And so, yeah, exactly. Is Rivet's new expansion Steam? Well, again, we're not going to give you that information tonight. So Easy E504 has asked for any plans for AI horns.
It's one of those things that we'd like to do, and it's one of those things that the minute you start looking at it, it gets more and more complicated, particularly Rule 14 in the States, which is the rule regarding how and when the horn should be used. And there are multiple types of it, so whether it's a horn to start moving, stop moving, go to a level grade crossing. And then there's rules in the UK about when they can and can't be used, and whether it's a high horn, low horn, just a low horn after certain hours.
Yeah.
And so all of that stuff needs to be considered. We can't just put a trigger point on the track and have it blow its horn, because that's no good. So no plans at the moment, but we do keep talking about it. It's something that we'd all it's one of those things that would just be fun. We've made the barge blow its foghorn as it goes past you.
True. Would something like station announcements fall into that category as well?
Again, station announcements is something that we've been looking at, and we've always built the PIS system. If you go back through many of the previous streams where we talked about introducing the PIS system, as in passenger information system, thing that says on the display boards on the platforms, we've always built that in a way that it could drive an audio system.
Right. Okay.
So we can use that to then piece together audio files in the same way that the real ones do, and use that to recreate the platform announcements. So again, it's not on anyone's task list to do that, but I know that one of the audio guys was looking at it in his own time recently because he was interested in finding out what we'd got and what we would need to do to get to being able to do that. And he was quite surprised actually how far the core systems already would support it.
Cool. Pancake Man's asked questions about manuals. So I think the aim is with manuals, we'll try and get as many done as we possibly can do for new content. Obviously, we have one for Cross City, we have one for CSW3. There wasn't one for Bremen Oldenburg. We do want to keep doing manuals, but it's a question of making sure that the people who are writing them have got the time with which to be able to get them out and to a good standard. So yeah. I think we decided with this one we weren't going to be able to do it. So rather than do a half-baked version, we decided just don't worry about it for this one. But it's not a we're not going to do it for future stuff. We do want to do them for future pieces of content as well.
Oh yeah.
Double G even. Serious question. This is a good question. Is this becoming more train game than train simulator?
No. How you think it's? You'll have to qualify your question because there's still tons of train sim in there, but you're allowed to have a bit of fun as well, even in reality. And you can ignore that fun if you decide that you want to focus on the train fun. So it's kind of one of my my hot buttons. So I'm going to back away from that question.
I mean, it is a good question to ask, and it is always something that we're kind of thinking about in our heads because we like train sim worlds, but it's also we want people to feel enjoyment out of it. We want people to feel like, and we talked about. I mean, I think the person that asked the question was the one that asked about the cats, and for instance, about it focusing on the trains. And obviously, that is our primary concern, but we also want to make it something which is enjoyable, and for the reason not necessarily because you're primarily because you're driving a train, you're enjoying driving a train, but we want those other kind of elements of, oh, yes, that feels good. And you can only get that with certain game elements to it, like achievements or scenarios or things like that, which actually probably are not like the most realistic things in the world because we create them up ourselves, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
different people like different things in the game, and one of the things that we like to do is to just we don't want to let any of the trivialities, the fun, the pure gamey things like collectibles and achievements ever get in the way of if you just want to sit and do your role-playing the driver thing, which is a completely valid way that the game supports you playing, then you should be able to do that. And the fact there's a collectible, you should be able to completely ignore that. We will not have floating stars to collect.
Aww.
And you will not be jumping through rings with a ding sound on them. These are not collectibles we are thinking of doing, I'm afraid.
I wonder
JD.
which games you could have taken those from.
I've no idea.
No.
So it's I did in an internal document about collectibles, I specifically called out things like that as this is not what I mean. Do not ever get tempted to do something like that. These should be always in theme in the world. And similarly, the cats, station cats exist. It's a thing. It's not, it's a bit of fun. But nothing should ever get in the way of that simulation element of it. So it's, I'm always open to have that discussion about is it a sim or is it a game? And my answer to that generally is it's both. It's got to be fun. Otherwise, why are we doing it? But we always keep to a true heritage of the game being based around the real driver experiences, based on some of the most accurate physics that have been, the physics system in Simulgraph is the best we've ever done. And then delivering the routes on top of that with their simulations of signaling. So, but some elements of it, like if you don't like the racing game type HUD, turn it off.
I think that's a really comprehensive answer, and it's not an easy question.
I thought I was quite restrained,
answer.
Actually.
I've asked Matt this question before offline, and I've got a very sort of impassioned answer, but it's
usually quite short.
He's done a very good job with that one, I think. Sorry, I just need to take a quick water. There was actually another really good question. Bearing in mind this is our last roadmap stream of the year, so we should be a little bit reflective. So I can't remember who it was in the chat now has asked us what our most proud thing in 2022 was. Whether that's with the game, routes, add-ons. What do you think?
Overall, Train Sim World 3 as a whole general release, I think that the team really clicked with what it was going on. And I don't just mean the dev team, I mean everybody, from marketing, that the entire company really clicked with what Train Sim World 3 was trying to do and got behind it. And it's just been a fantastic release. It's gone down really well, and is being played by an awful lot of people. So it's got some really good content on it that I really enjoy, and some really good features. I mean, that lighting system has just revolutionized how you play the game, and there's still some tweaks to be done. One of the TAs has been looking at things like, why is it get over bright in certain circumstances?
Okay.
But we need to be really careful about what you do there, because his feedback to me was, well, I can change that, but then it might get too dark in other places and that might be worse. So it's one of the challenges with light is that there might be a bunch of different things at play. At the very minimum, you've got the sky and eye adaptation on the iris stuff, and the brightness could be any one of those, either of those things. It could be a gamma setting, set it incorrectly in the core. There could be a number. So you can't just say, turn it down. It's never that easy, unfortunately, I'm afraid.
No. And I think if it were, we would have, by this point, we would have just flicked a switch and it would have happened. Everything has a nuance to it and everything has an impact elsewhere. And I think, as I say, it's only if you make that change and then something goes wrong, do you realize, oh, perhaps that's not a great idea, which is why sometimes we do err on the side of caution a little bit more, which is when we're talking about things like Add-ons Manager, for instance. We don't just rush them out and put them straight out.
Well, also, the skies that you're looking at there are the result of months and months of work.
Yeah.
Of tuning it and setting it up. So you then don't want to go in there with your size 12 boots and kick some settings around without then fully going through a sort of evaluation of different routes, different times, different seasons, different stations on routes, different latitude, longitudes, and make sure that the sun at different positions and different heights and so forth in the sky, and the moon, and all of these factors then need to be just checked to make sure that, yes, you fixed that one situation, but these three down here now look terrible. So we just need to, for those of you talking about the over brightness, definitely, and it is too bright in some circumstances, but we just need to make sure we make that change carefully. But overall, no, TSW3, absolutely over the moon with it. Very proud of it. Very proud of what the team did with it.
I was reacting to the chat a couple of times when you were
I thought you were laughing at me.
No, I wasn't laughing at you. There was a couple of mentions of the highlight of my year being the TSW3 leak, which of course was...
We all enjoyed that.
Which was not the highlight by any stretch of the imagination. That was by far the low light.
I know, but we've had you writing lines on the board as a result.
Yeah.
There's been some fun that came after it.
I'm not afraid to fess up when I've done something wrong. So, and people to take the mick, I'm absolutely fine with that. So I think, just to go back to, again, being a little bit more serious about it, I think for me, we put through like quite a lot of pieces of content throughout the course of the year, and I think we often don't get the opportunity to sort of sit back and reflect too often. And I think what the TSW3 launch did for us is it allowed us the opportunity to kind of have a really clear window of, actually, let's do this right. Let's make sure that we get the point, get across what we want it to be about. Let's make sure that the announce is exciting and vibrant and interesting, and that we're doing everything that we can to provide the best possible experience for players. The early access window, I was a little bit nervous about it, because early access always is one of those areas which, if it goes really well, is an absolute blessing, and if it doesn't go quite so well, it can be a bit of a nightmare. And kudos to the development team for making sure that was as smooth as it possibly could be. But then actually when we launched as well, and you could see all of the amazing shots of the new lighting on the forums and people sharing their experiences with the new game, and just the general excitement and hubbub of a whole community of people enjoying the same thing at the same time together, I think is absolutely wonderful. And we rarely get the opportunity to do that. So as somebody who looks after the community, hopefully community, then it's one of the highlights that you can have as somebody who is director of community, is having all of those people at the same time engaging in a vibrant, constructive community. And not all of it was positive, but it was all really constructive and some brilliant discussions going on. And that's all we can ask of everybody. So thank you very much for making that my highlight of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fun looking at the stuff, and I always enjoyed watching the streams. But some of the screenshots you've all been sharing on the forums. There's one thread, I think it might have been Chief Longshin's thread about the Sky screenshots with the new lighting. Absolutely beautiful. If you haven't gone and had a look, go and have a look.
Do you know what? It might be recency bias as well, but JMB's actually mentioned in the chat that we released Spirit of Steam this year as well. And I'd completely forgotten that we released Spirit of Steam.
May, wasn't it?
And that was, again, absolutely incredible. We're obviously aware that the TSW3 version needs a little bit of work at this point, but the release of Spirit of Steam was
the result of a lot of months' work, of building that. It was years. Yeah, there's a heck of a lot of work that came together to bringing Steam out. So yeah, you're right. Actually, Steam and TSW3 are two absolutely phenomenal pillars for the year. Not to belittle the rest of the content that's come out, but sort of those two are probably strong highlights.
29th of May seems like a really, really long time ago.
It does. It was at least 4 years ago, wasn't it?
Oh, no, it feels like it. It feels like it. Someone's actually just put in the chat, I kind of wanted that to be the last question, but I'll ask it anyway. It's not quite as exciting a question of what's the best thing in 2022, but it was around the differences between a route. We kind of covered it a little bit earlier, but differences between a route add-on and an expansion add-on, and we basically aligned it to think of something like a Diesel Legends pack where you get increased gameplay on a particular route and some additional bits and pieces that, again, are as yet undefined to you guys, but don't expect it to be a whole new loco, because that would be a loco pack. Yeah. Or I guess these might come as a separate patch in relation to the expansion pack, but actually they won't touch the actual route itself very much either. The pack won't be intending to touch the route particularly, no. It's about adding gameplay to what's on there. So, mostly it's about expect tutorial scenarios and timetables and some bits and pieces of content to go with it to get more. It's about getting more fun out of the route. Absolutely. So what's happened to the 4-up challenges? Well, I believe we've tasked Sam to do one as our last stream of this year. No, maybe not last stream. One of the last streams of this year. So hopefully we'll be able to get that recorded for you and live. We want it to be, I think, a best of or most requested. I think so. Matt, you're obviously on it. I'm not, but not that I'm. No, what we want is JD on a switching stream. Oh God, that was not the highlight of my year. It was a highlight of my year. It was hilarious. Oh, when was that? Oh, I can't remember now, but that was amazing. That was amazing. JD rage quitting. Oh. that was even. Do you know what? I would put that below leaking TSW3 as my low point of the year. I've never been as frustrated as I was in that. It was like a puzzle that I just had no idea where even to start so. That's interesting. Chief Longshin has an interesting way of putting it. You have a problem with switching trains and switching windows. I mean, if it's any consolation, that kind of and a couple of other things contributed to us actually doing more in-office live streams as well. So obviously not great at the time, but hopefully good things have come from it. Because I love that we've got this really good setup here now, and we can do a lot more with it. We've got some great dedicated hardware for doing the streaming now, and we're looking at what we can do with this room to get more out of it as well. So hopefully we can level up what we do on the streams next year as well. Absolutely. So I think that leaves us as a nice little endpoint for today. We've done quite a lot of Q&A, nearly an hour actually, which wasn't in the original plan, but I've enjoyed it. It's nice to have an opportunity to just sort of sit back, chill, and answer some questions, because I know we don't do this kind of thing that often, but we would want to try and perhaps when we have slightly less packed roadmap streams to have an opportunity like half an hour Q&A so that we can answer some of the pertinent things that you want a little bit more information about. So again, that's my New Year's resolution for next year. We won't be doing like a Q&A between Christmas and New Year. We want everybody to have a bit of a relax and a chill during that window rather than jumping on a live stream and whatnot. Obviously Sam and Matt kind of traditionally done that, but we don't want really anybody to be doing that this year. We want everybody to have a nice, relaxing Christmas. I think the team have deserved it. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Holiday Express, Runaway Elf is out next Tuesday. Check out the website for more information. And if you've missed any of the things that we've talked about, we're going to be timestamping this roadmap live stream probably tomorrow morning. So if you've missed anything and you want to find out exactly where we've talked about something, we'll try and make it as clear as possible where you can find that information.
And don't forget to join Adam and Alex on Tuesday. Let's playing the Holiday Express.
Do you know what? I'm going to mandate that they wear Christmas jumpers as well.
They need to be as cool as mine.
And they need to be as cool as Matt, the chili salesman. That there we go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is that for the year. I think that feels like a very good point to end on. Have a lovely Christmas, everybody. I might see you beforehand, but have a lovely Christmas, and we wish... and cut, everybody.